WFIN News Director Matt Demchek, and I'll be the co-moderator for the forum, along with Steve Dillon from the Courier behind me. Our participants this evening are Abby Hefflinger, Grant Russell, Tom Schindeldecker, and Jeff Wobser. Steve and I have selected the questions for tonight's forum, and the candidates are not aware of what they will be asked. The structure of tonight's forum is as follows. Each candidate will get a 2-minute opening statement, and we'll follow that with our Q&A, our question and answer session. Each candidate gets 60 seconds to answer, and we can ask follow-up questions to individual candidates or to the group as a whole. Candidates get 60 seconds to answer follow-up questions, and if a candidate is called into question by another, we can give 60 seconds for rebuttal. Now, before tonight's forum, we drew numbers to determine who would be giving the first opening statement, and that honor goes to Mr. Tom Schindeldecker, so he'll be giving the first opening statement. So, Tom, it's all you. You got the floor.
Thank you, and thank you, too, to the University of Findlay, to the Findlay Publishing Company, the radio stations, and others who are involved in this forum. It's great that we have this opportunity. And also congratulations to our opponent at the far end, Abby Hefflinger, who will be getting married on Saturday. So our best wishes to her. Come January, at least 4 of the 10 members of City Council will be newcomers. Could be as many as 5. We also have a very dynamic, very intelligent young mayor who is wisdom beyond her years, but nevertheless has been in office less than a year. We'll have a new council president, albeit John Harrington has served 6 years on City Council. It's great to have new, enthusiastic people and new ideas and new perspectives, but it's also important that we have experience. There are a number of unresolved issues that still remain, which is one of the major reasons that I decided to run for another term. I'd like to see them through. We have a number of areas, strategic planning. Jeff is a chairman of that committee. We have some zoning issues. We have, of course, the Blanchard Street issue and so forth. What do I bring to the table? I think I bring a good sense of what the people in the community want. And it's important that we listen to the public. It's also important in some areas that we use our judgment. Sometimes the best solution is not necessarily the most popular one, but I think that's an area that I think I have some talent and can bring to the table. As the forum continues, I'm sure we'll get into some of those areas where there is dispute, disagreement, and concern, and we'll hear some answers at that time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Schindeldecker, for your opening statement. And now we move on to Grant Russell for your opening statement.
All right. Well, thank you to WFIN, to the Courier, and the University of Findlay for hosting us tonight. I always appreciate the opportunity to discuss the city. I think we have a very good story to tell. I am truly honored to represent all of the citizens of the city of Findlay on Findlay City Council. During my time in office, I've chaired 2 of the most important council committees, the Planning and Zoning Committee and the Appropriations Committee. I've worked on a major rewrite of our zoning code and updates of our zoning map, changes to our income tax code. I've done ride-alongs with the police, with the fire, snowplow drivers, and even the sewer filming crew. I've worked with the Downtown Findlay Improvement District, the Blanchard River Watershed Partnership, the Hancock Regional Planning Commission, and many others. And of course, there have been a lot of conversations with citizens, lots of them, over and over. For me, every day is a town hall meeting. In fact, just walking home from council last night, a citizen saw me and we talked the Blanchard Street project as I walked home. He was in favor of it. He also wanted to talk a little bit about city communications. He was not so impressed. We definitely have room to improve there. Today it was conversations about the fire training facility, and just an hour before this meeting, a phone conversation with a resident of Blanchard Street who wanted to, of course, discuss the Blanchard Street project, and she too was in favor of the project. It all involves hard work, lots of reading, a lot of research, a large time commitment. It's something that I'm happy to do, and I'm actually very honored to be able to do. So I'm excited for tonight's conversation and look forward to discussing these issues. Thanks for having us.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Russell. Mr. Wobser, your opening statement.
Thank you. And thank you to Steve and Matt for hosting us tonight and throwing out questions for us. It'll be an interesting evening. My name is Jeff Wobser. I was born and raised in Findlay and moved back to town in 2001, and I'm currently running for my third term in office. Currently on council, I am on the chair of the Strategic Planning Committee on Appropriations, and also our council's representative to the Raise the Bar Board of Directors, which is doing very good work here in Findlay also. The thing that I have always been focused on with council is our numbers, and it is not the fun and exciting part of council. It is our budget, it is our spending, and it is our long-term financial security. One of the things that I feel I can help the city with and bring to the city is a good background in finances, and my goal is to make sure that we continue to invest in the stability of our financial future. There are several things that we need to continue to work on that we'll work on in this next 2-year cycle. We need to increase the amount of money that we put into our rainy day fund. We currently have 2 months of our operating budget is in our rainy day fund. That needs to be increased to a minimum of 3, and that's actually just the minimum amount that's suggested. We probably need to go more like 4 or 5 months. Also, looking forward to working with the auditor, we believe that we need to put into place a restricted replace and improvement fund for the water department. The government just mandated that this be put into place for the sewer department. And that is such that money is put aside so that we can invest in the future of those things.
All right, and that is time. Thank you, Mr. Wobser. And now the opening statement from Ms. Hefflinger.
Thank you. I want to thank you for inviting me to this forum. It's a privilege to be here. For those of you that don't already know who I am, I'm Abby Hefflinger, and I'd like to introduce myself. I'm from Hancock County originally. I love this area. I took a short hiatus from the county to go to The Ohio State University for my undergraduate degree. I came back. I went to law school at Ohio Northern University. I was a public defender here in town for 5 years, and I really valued that work. It allowed me to see the parts of the city that don't get acknowledged, that do exist, that we need to acknowledge and work on. I've also been a professor. I've taught mediation. I feel like that has given me the skills that I would need to participate with others that don't see everything my way on council. I would be able to negotiate in that forum. I think that it's important that we have our citizenry involved in all of the issues that we're presenting and that we're planning moving forward. I feel that maybe that has not been done as effectively as it could have been the past few years, and that's one of the reasons that I've decided to run. I also believe that people should have a choice. In our democracy-style system, I think that people should not get to retain their seats just because they're the only people on the ballot, that we should have a healthy debate and give people options. Thank you.
And thank you, Ms. Hefflinger, for your opening statement. And now that the opening statements are in the book, I'll throw it over to Steve Dillon from the Courier for our first questions in tonight's forum.
Thank you, Matt. First question, we're going to stick to some current issues here. The city administration has proposed altering Blanchard Street and Lincoln Street to include the dedicated bike lanes and/or shared lanes. There seems to be considerable opposition to the plan. It will be up to Findlay City Council whether to appropriate money for the project. Where do you stand and why? We'll start with you, Mr. Grant.
Mr. Russell?
Mr. Russell.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's all right, Mr. Steve.
Yes. That's fair.
Oh, start me over on the time, come on. I support the Blanchard Street project. It's quite simple. The proposed changes will improve safety on the street significantly and increase throughput for the traffic. On top of that, it will allow us to repave that large section of Blanchard Street for 5 cents on the dollar because of state matching grants. Quite simply, when a citizen talks about being on a fixed income and their inability to handle any more taxes, 5 cents on the dollar sounds like a good way to work with our capital plan. It's effective financial management. Yes, there's been a lot of opposition to the plan. There's also been a significant amount of support for the plan. At the community forum that was held, talking to the DOT representative or the Ohio ODOT representative, he said it was actually surprised to see how many people were there in favor of it. That's unusual. I think the citizens it was about a 40-60 split with citizens' comments.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Mr. Wobser, same question.
I agree with the current plan for some of the same reasons Grant does. The main reason, though, for me is that the ODOT study shows that it will make that street safer, number one, and it doesn't impede the flow of traffic. With that said, as a citizen pointed out in the newspaper not too long ago, the data that was used there could be updated such that we're using more current data, because it could be that traffic flow on that street has increased due to the Main Street renovation. So I would like to see us take and rerun those numbers, redo the study, just enough to see if we come up with the same conclusions. If we do, then I would still be in favor of it. If it changes those conclusions, then we need to step back and potentially look at a different solution.
Thank you, Mr. Wobser. Ms. Heflinger?
Thank you. I've been able to speak with many people about this topic. It seems to be a lively debate topic for people to bring up when you're chatting with them. Some of the feedback that I've heard has been quite negative about the whole thing, and upon doing some research on the matter, I don't think that as is I agree with the plan. Here's why. I think that restricting the amount of lanes that you have going in either direction is going to take us back to an era where we didn't have nearly as many cars in this town, and now we do. The improvements that have happened on Main Street have made it very pretty, but it's diverted traffic. And Blanchard Street is very high traffic now. It's also partially a state route, so we have a lot of trucks in the area, which makes it very unsafe. If we're actually looking for safety and we're looking to reduce accidents, it seems like the majority of accidents are happening at intersections.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Schindelbecker?
I definitely oppose the Blanchard Street project, and here's why. If you look at the situation at Main Cross and Western Avenue, where you have a one lane and one turn lane, right by the old St. Michael's Church. There's chaos there every day. Traffic can be backed up as far as the railroad tracks, sometimes as far as Deitches. You could probably go in and get an ice cream cone at Deitches and come back out and not see your car move anymore. I think the idea of a bike lane is not a good idea. As a safety factor, I would not want a bike lane, nor do I want to see the street reduced from 4 lanes to 2. I mentioned the situation at Main Cross. That was one. I think we need to do some other things first. I think we need to put signage south of the Main Cross intended for southbound traffic, such as we have before Lincoln Street. Through traffic, keep to the curb lane. We need to do some other things first. I oppose it.
Thank you. Like the bike plan, the Howard Run Ditch proposal has gotten a lot of attention lately. What concerns, if any, do you have with the project? And we'll start with you, Mr. Wobser, this time.
You know, right off, we had a short discussion about this yesterday at a committee of the whole meeting about what we're going to do there. The ditches are the domain of the county. And so we rely on them to get that work done. We sometimes have to help fund those projects. You know, flood mitigation is always a big issue. We need to continue to make sure that the ditches are as clean so they drain out our neighborhoods as best they can. It is a tough situation. it's just about the same as flood mitigation. So it's a tough one, and we'll continue to work closely with the county to make sure that we do the best we can for the citizens of Findlay.
Thank you, Mr. Wobser. Ms. Heflinger?
Thank you. So nobody likes it when their taxes go up. That's clear, well established. However, to have good free-flowing ditches, we do need to clean them out. We all need to participate in that. I think that the county is trying to effectively go about that. They may have included the public in on that a little later than maybe what they should have. When people are given information as something's going to be happening rather than prior to, and giving them just a heads up, hey, this is going to be happening, they appreciate that. I think that that's a problem with a lot of the issues that we have here in town, and I would have had public forums prior to the current public forum that was just had a couple weeks ago.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Schindeldecker?
I believe I'm the only one up here who was affected by the Howard Run ditch that runs about 4 or 5 houses to the east of where we live. I think it needs to be done. I've seen firsthand the area around Glenwood School and around Melrose Avenue. It can get rather full, and it can overflow frequently. There's a lot of debris and a lot of trees and so forth that are clogging up the ditch. And it's only going to get worse. The ditch, they say it starts at the Blanchard River and goes north. It actually flows the other way, but that's the way they designate it. With McLean and the Campbell property and other properties that, and other businesses that certainly will be in the new section of Tall Timbers, it's going to get worse before it gets better. Ditches need to be cleaned. I don't like spending money any more than anybody else, but let's get the job done.
Okay, thank you. We'll have Matt back up for a couple more questions.
Can I answer? Steve, is it?
Mr. Gilman would like to
It
answer.
happens when you're late, Grant. Sorry.
And he was worried about making the mistakes. Mr. Russell?
Thank you, sir. I support the project. Ohio Revised Code is pretty clear on how ditch maintenance projects have to be vetted through the public. The first meeting is a viewing of the ditch. Public participation is not allowed by Ohio Revised Code. So it wasn't as if the county engineer had any say in this. They were following their rules. A ditch is similar to, in essence, an open storm sewer. And just like we clean and maintain our storm sewers, we should be cleaning and maintaining our ditches. When Dazzle Ditch came about, the city actually contributed $300,000 towards that project. I think that'll be a discussion that the city will have at budget time for support of this project when the time comes. I would definitely support us helping with that, with the project monetarily. But all in all, yes, support maintenance of our ditches just like I support maintenance of all our infrastructure.
Thank you. Okay, Matt.
All right, our next question deals with the F word, flooding. Flood control may still be the city government's most important challenge. Finally, some progress seems to be made with the first benching project nearly complete and more projects being planned. But the question is, for the panel, are you satisfied with the decisions that have been made, and what more should be done to finally get this in our rearview mirror? And we start with this question with Ms. Heflinger.
Thank you. So as far as flooding goes, it's well known Findlay floods. Findlay floods way too often. The problem is that we've known this for a really long time and we've yet to fix it. There might not be a 100% fix out there, but there's definitely things that we can go and do currently that we're not. My other problem with how things have been handled is that although there have been previous studies of how to fix the problem, we've not followed those. And as far as making it worse, we've allowed areas to develop and we've granted people permits to develop in areas that used to lay full of water. Where do we think that water is going to go? Now it's affecting people 100% of the time because they live in a home there rather than a field that it wasn't impacting as many folks. So I think we need to do better on not making it worse first and then fix it.
Thank you, Ms. Hefflinger. Mr. Schindeldecker.
I have a list of issues I thought would probably come up, and the top of my list was flood control. I think the benching project is good. I think it's going to help considerably. I don't think that's the be-all and end-all. We need to keep putting pressure on Norfolk and Southern to replace the bridge, which is also part of that benching project. I hope that the benching project will be successful enough that we will do something similar in other areas, maybe in the county. I think that's something that we're looking into right now. Even beyond that, however, I think we need to do some long-range planning as to what's going to happen with the open property that is developed because of the properties that have been purchased because of the flood situation. I think in the long run, the Blanchard River and some of those properties are going to be the focal point of Findlay. We need to know what we can do with those, and in some cases what we can do if it shows that we're no longer in the floodplain. We need a very specific study of what can we do with that land.
Thank you, Mr. Schindeldecker. And now on to Mr. Russell. The question is flood control.
No matter how hard I try, we can't undo what was done in the past, so I like to look forward and see what our opportunities are. I think the benching will be a very interesting to see how it mitigates flood, how much it changes our flood maps. There's also the project south of town that's going to act as a retention basin. I'd like to see that project continue to develop. And it's funny, the railroad bridge, I remember during one of the floods standing there looking at it with Warren Kraut, and he laid out how that bridge acts like a dam. And Warren Kraut, if you're listening tonight, you are spot on, you were correct, and that railroad bridge needs to be rebuilt so it doesn't act like a dam. Tom does bring up a good point, though. What do you do with all the land now made vacant because of the flood mitigation efforts? There is wonderful opportunities, wonderful recreational opportunities that are available there. Good, strong planning in that area is very important, and now is the time to get started.
Thank you very much, Mr. Russell. And now Mr. Wobser.
I think there's no doubt that we've been through a lot of fits and starts with the flood mitigation process. We've spent a lot of money. But I would say that overall, the money that has been spent relatively well by buying properties that were in the flood zone that will always be in the flood zone, regardless of what we do on flood mitigation. And that goes to what Tom and Grant have talked about on the property that we can now develop potentially and look at from a public resource. I think we're going the right direction. We need to just continue to move down that path. Anything that happens with the government never happens quickly, and we have to accept that and continue to move slowly and consistently down that path. One thing very quickly, though, we can't slow down our growth because of flood mitigation. Remember that when you build something in Findlay, you have to offset what you've built or paved with a retention pond. So there is a net zero overall effect to the flood zone.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wobser. On to our next question in tonight's forum. The City of Findlay, despite its sound financial condition, has not embraced body cameras for police officers and doesn't have dash cams in its cruisers either. Many communities our size and smaller have. The question is, do you support cameras? And we begin with Mr. Schindeldecker.
I think we certainly need dash cams and cameras and body cameras and so on and so forth. The problem with those, and I don't think all these issues have been resolved yet, there are some issues of publicity and so forth. First of all, it takes a long time to review the tapes of all of those issues. What if someone inadvertently is seen in one of these body cams or dash cams that is not in any way involved? There are some issues of privacy. The police chief has addressed those. I think we have much of the material. We're pretty modern, really, with what we have in our police department. I think we need to think long and hard exactly what our protocol is going to be as we use them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schindeldecker. Mr. Russell.
I kind of feel sorry for my wife sometimes because when she's with me and a lot of times I'll go up to a policeman and just start talking to him about things. Oh, you have a body cam. What kind of camera is it? What has it been like to have? It actually changes how police. It's something that is going to be transformational, I think, in the way that the police conduct their business. Do I think we're going to be there eventually? Yes, and I think we will get there in a measured pace. There is so much more than just simply the camera on the officer. There's the ability to store the information that's saved, to protect privacy, to be able to use that information and retain it for court cases. There's more below the surface than there is than just the camera. But overall, I think we're going to go towards it. And to the police that I've talked to, they get used to it, and they think it actually ends up to be an effective tool for them. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Russell. On to Mr. Wobser. The question is body cameras, and should Findlay police have them?
This is a topic that we discussed about 2.5 years ago, and it was actually part of a debate question several years ago. And at that point in time, there was one incident that everybody thought could have been helped or maybe prevented had we had body cameras. Well, I tend to agree with Grant in that we don't know exactly how that affects the police. And from my perspective, it's the cost issue. The good news is as cameras become more available and the technology that goes into them to make them work gets better, the costs go down. You have to remember, it's not just the camera, it is the storage of all that data and retention of it and how it's reviewed. There's a lot of costs that goes into it that you don't normally see or wouldn't think about. So I think those costs continue to come down, and at some point in time we'll get there. Right now we just don't need it right now, but eventually we probably will.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wobser. Ms. Hefflinger, your thoughts?
Thank you. As the only person on stage that currently works in the legal justice system, I every day see the need for body cams. I think that Findlay should embrace this. I have personally worked with the Lima Police Department in developing their policies and procedures to make it so that it is fair, equitable, and provides protection for victims in those instances. It allows for us to obtain proof. It gives us a full accounting of what went on, one way or the other. That builds trust with our community that I think there's a big problem with. And building trust in your community is a solid investment. There are some financial costs, but the investment in your community and the trust level with the police is worth the price.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hefflinger. And we're already about halfway through this forum for the 3 at-large seats on Findlay City Council, so we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back after this.
When it comes to your child's future, no district offers more opportunities for personal development and academic success than Findlay City Schools. Located in the heart of Hancock County, Ohio, our public school system actively works with faculty, parents, and local members of the community to provide a diverse curriculum where students have access to state-of-the-art technology so they can stay ahead of the curve. From preschool to high school, each classroom is designed to promote hands-on learning and provide students with a safe environment to make friends, inspire others, and acquire self-discipline.
Hi, my name is Braylon, and I love being in a Leader in Me school. The 7 habits help me be a great student and a great leader. My favorite habit is habit 6, synergize. When I synergize, I work with others to create a team. When we synergize, we can accomplish more than if we work alone. Go Trojans!
For students looking to explore and develop their creative abilities, Findlay City Schools offers a variety of unique programs in the performing arts. From indoor drumline and orchestra to our exciting theater program, students have an array of extracurricular activities to excel in. Home of the Trojans, nothing says school spirit like Findlay City Schools athletics. We provide a positive athletic experience for our student athletes, coaches, parents, and fans at the highest level of interscholastic sports. We offer competitive teams that promote values of sportsmanship, loyalty, tradition, teamwork, honor, scholastic achievement with leadership, and a strong sense of respect for self and others.
Findlay City Schools has great curricular opportunities for our students, and beyond that, our extracurricular opportunities include gifted education, STEM education, dual credit options, very competitive athletic programs, and fine arts programs that are just tremendous. Findlay City Schools is a great opportunity for all their students.
Findlay City Schools. Start
Okay, we're back for the second half of the at-large candidates forum. And the next question involves strategic planning. Strategic planning is a concept the city auditor, among others, has been looking into for some time. A council committee has met 7 or 8 times, I believe, on the issue in the past 2 years, but has yet to make much progress. Where do you stand on the need for a strategic plan, and how do we go about it? And we'll start with you, Mr. Russell.
I wholeheartedly support us having a strategic plan. The time to do it is now. How to do it? A big part of developing a strategic plan is making sure that all voices from the city are heard, not just the loudest voices. The previous attempts at trying to solicit community input have been lacking. It hasn't been something to be able to develop actually a forward-looking plan for your city. So I think we need to get outside help, consultants or organizations that do this for a living. We need to invest the time and the money and the energy to develop a plan. And once we have a plan, then we need to implement it. But the first part is it's going to take a long time to get it started, something that we should be able to do in this coming term.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Mr. Wobser?
The Strategic Planning Committee was something that I helped get into place and get started. We're currently reviewing an RFP that we're going to go and have an outside consultant work with us to put the initial strategic plan together. Some people may say, hey, why do we even need this? The city's running well, we've got money, everything's good. Well, that's not necessarily the case from the standpoint of long-term look. When outside companies who want to come to Findlay, when bond rating companies look at us, if we have to go out for debt, they look at these things, and the strategic plan is one of those items that will help us look even better in the eyes of investors. So we need to get this put into place. It has taken us a while to get there and get started, but we continue to move forward, and I'm sure that we'll have that done in the next year or so.
Thank you, Mr. Wobser. Ms. Heflinger?
Thank you. Strategic planning only works if you do it. You have to be committed, you have to devote the time, and you have to put in the effort. I have been a participant in doing so with the not-for-profit that I work for. I've been one of the people selecting the outside agency to help us through the process. I've been the one taking the time to develop what's important to us, what our goals should be, how we should get there, what's the most effective way to get there. And I've been the one devoting my time at work to actually implementing a strategic plan. Instead of talking about how we might do it, we need to commit to it and do it.
Thank you. Mr. Schindler-Decker?
I think we've all heard the story about the young couple that got married and started to set up housekeeping. I'm sure you're beyond that point. You buy a washer and a dryer and a refrigerator and a stove, and 12 or 15 years later, if you're lucky, they all go bad at the same time. We do not need a situation such as that. We do need strategic planning. When we began this process about a year ago, we thought, let's have some town meetings and see what people think. We rather quickly decided we need to go to town meetings or whatever process we're going to use with some ideas of our own. What is your reaction to what this is? What do you think? Well, I don't know. I think we're on the right track. We need to do it, and I think we need to spend some money to do it right.
Okay, thank you. Next question. There hasn't been much discussion lately, at least publicly, about the Argyle Development Project, which was announced this spring. Some would say no news means the project is dead. If it is, what have we learned from that process? We'll start with you, Mr. Wobser.
Well, that project was probably the number one topic that we discussed when we were here 6 months ago for the primary. What happened with that was that the city made an offer for the sale of the parking lot to the consultant, or excuse me, the contractor, and we never heard back. It died right there. Unfortunately, we were looking for them to come back to us and at least, if they didn't like our offer, to counter so that we could further the discussion. but things stopped right there. And unfortunately, because of the way that we have to deal with items of this matter within council, we couldn't talk a lot about the numbers to the press, to the public. So it seemed probably a little sketchy from the standpoint of the information that we could make public. I'll tell you today, we as council wanted that to move forward. We were looking forward to working with the contractor. They were the ones who stopped the process.
Thank you. Ms. Heflinger?
Thank you. I can confirm from the outside viewing what was happening on the inside, it did seem sketchy. We didn't know the amounts you were talking about. We saw preferential treatment for those who wanted to live in a high-rise versus preference for actual affordable housing, which is a dire need here in this county. It seemed from the outside looking in that it was a low amount for the city to get for the space. When we look at the parking problem that we have downtown and eliminating all of those public parking spots to give to a private owner, we should be getting something more financially if we're going to be giving up such a big public asset. So from the outside looking in, I agree, it did look sketchy.
Thank you. Mr. Schindeldecker?
I want to approach it at a bit of a different perspective. Yes, I think we were saddened that this project didn't go forward, but one thing we learned, and that was part of your question, where can we go from here, is the concern that people have for parking. I'm glad we have a parking problem. I really am glad we have a parking problem downtown. That means we have a dynamic downtown that is growing and not just dying on the vine. However, we need to be concerned about that. We're probably not going to generate more on-street parking along Main Street. It's pretty much there. But we need to look forward to what we can do to provide additional parking. People are going to have to get used to walking a block or so to get it. I'm suggesting maybe we ought to establish a parking fund and put some money into it, and as we go along, put a little bit more, and when a property that appears to be good for parking comes along, we would be able to purchase it. That is the perspective that I draw from what we had going on in the spring.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Russell?
If you'd like to know what happened to that project, ask the developer. It was a private development opportunity. One can surmise, one can speculate that the money wasn't there, but do I know that for fact? No, that would be a question for the developer. What we did learn is that downtown Findlay is desirable. Here is a gentleman and his company that looked to put together a project. For whatever reason, it didn't work. It didn't work out. Hopefully, there's another organization that's looking at it and can make it work. Should prime downtown real estate be used for affordable housing? I would suggest not. I would suggest we would keep developing projects like the Blanchard Station Apartments and the Crawford Station Apartments, 150 units out on Melrose Avenue that were being developed once again by a private entity. But affordable housing, specifically on expensive lots in downtown, probably not the best use of that property, and something that won't happen simply because a developer can't make it happen financially.
Okay, thank you. Matt, we'll have a couple more questions for us.
Our next question deals with the opioid epidemic. It has hit communities throughout Ohio, and Findlay hasn't been spared. While overdose deaths are starting to decline, police often arrive first to overdose calls, and the Findlay Fire Department carries Narcan, but city police do not. The question is, should they? And we begin with Ms. Heflinger.
Yes.
Okay.
That might seem simple, but yes. They are first responders. Part of their job is to serve and protect. We have a very serious problem on our hands with the opioid epidemic. I've had the opportunity to actually work with folks that have heroin addiction. Looking them in their eyes is different than talking about it on a stage. I think that we need to invest in more rehabilitation services in the area. We don't have nearly enough counselors. We don't have nearly the housing that's necessary for these folks to thrive and succeed. And if they're still actively using, yes, we need to be bringing them back so that we can turn them into productive citizens, because I've seen it happen. It can happen.
Thank you very much, Ms. Heflinger. Mr. Schindeldecker.
Well, the decision to arm fire department personnel with Narcan before police was a decision that was made after some study. The first responders who are the first at the scene, generally speaking, are from the fire department. Should the police carry them as well? Yes. I think we're heading in that direction. But it is a serious problem, and we're not any more immune to it than anyone else. And in many ways, we know that the drug problem is somewhat more serious in Findlay than elsewhere, if for no other reason than the presence of Interstate 75. But yes, police officers should have them, but the decision to have fire personnel have them first was a very decision that was very reasoned.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schindeldecker. Mr. Russell.
Short answer is yes. Once again, I think that it's a simpler solution to say than to actually implement, but one that if it's going to help us be I don't think there's any one, I know there's no one solution to the opioid problem. This can be part of the solution to keep people alive, so I'm supportive of that. But there's more to it. I know that last night we approved a grant from the, I think, Ohio Attorney General's office to continue the quick response team. It's where the police and together with the counseling agencies are working with opiate addicted folks to help get them into treatment. There's going to be an announcement soon about an expansion of a similar type of program. We need to do pretty much everything under the in the book that we can think of to help in this situation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Russell. Mr. Wobser.
I would agree with the rest of the candidates that we need to move that direction. As Grant mentioned, though, the devil is in the details. Just saying that we're going to provide Narcan to our police is just not that simple. It takes quite the process to get that done. Narcan has a shelf life. It's only good for a certain amount of time. It must be kept at a certain temperature. It's tough to do when you're dealing with a police car, much easier to do when you're dealing with ambulances that are in a more controlled situation. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't find ways to overcome that, but we need to realize that there is a lot more that goes into that than just saying, yes, here's a Narcan pen. Do we have a problem in Findlay with the opioid epidemic? Yeah, we do. And I think it's one of those things that a lot of us don't like to look at. We don't want to realize that, but we do, and we need to continue to work the direction, as Abby pointed out in some of her comments, to help those folks that are having problems.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wobser. Our next question: Findlay has grown dramatically over the past 5 years. What are the greatest needs of the city as of this moment? We begin with Mr. Schindeldecker.
I think the greatest need in the community at the moment is housing. We have gone beyond the limits of commuting distance to Findlay. I mean, it's one thing to commute from Van Buren, it's another thing from North Baltimore, it's still another thing from Deschler. And I think we absolutely need the housing, and we need it at all levels. One concern I do have, a lot of the housing is going up on the north side. That happens to be my neighborhood. And that's where property is. It has also put a bit of a strain on a couple of our schools, and particularly Jacobs School, which has almost twice the number of students who are on reduced or free lunches as the others. That's the problem for the schools to deal with. We have to be aware of that. That's the major thing. We are so fortunate in this community, and if we do nothing, we don't stand still, we fall backward. We need to go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schindeldecker. Mr. Russell.
There are many items that we can be working on right now. Housing is definitely one of them. We need to do things that we can do we need to do things to encourage continued redevelopment, especially of things like foreclosed homes or empty lots. I know that other communities have used a land bank very successfully in that area to help for redevelopment of really anywhere that we can place housing. I think also it's important for the city to continue to financially plan for when times aren't as well. And Jeff alluded to that in his opening comments about ensuring that our reserves are, that we're properly reserved, that we have the ability to get through a recession. We've implemented a new pay contract with police and fire that actually ties wage increases to our income tax increases. That's a key part of it. But when times are well, you plan for when times are bad.
Thank you very much, Mr. Russell. The question again, what are the greatest needs of the city as of this moment? We move on to Mr. Wobser.
It's interesting to note, last night at our pre-budget meeting with the auditor, one of the things that he mentioned was that our income tax, our income from the income tax has only gone up about just a little over 2%. With all the growth that we've had in the city that you were alluding to, Matt, we've not seen an inordinate amount of growth. In fact, you would think that our growth in that income revenue would probably be more than that given the economy that we're seeing, but we're not. So there's probably some reasons for that, and we need to look into that more and find out exactly what's happening with those numbers. But as we continue to grow, which we're doing it from an industrial side, we're going to find our biggest issue is our workforce. A lot of our, right now, about 60% of the workforce drives into city every day. That's because there's not housing here, potentially, or maybe they like living where they're at. But we need to continue to find more people and train those folks to take the jobs that are available.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wobser. Ms. Hefflinger.
Thank you. I think that some of the things we need to be working on, as previously stated, housing is a major issue, especially people that don't make as much as all of us up here. Affordable housing is very important. We need to work on the parking problem. There's been some discussion about that already. Some traffic solutions, that needs to be a big area of focus. Transportation. We are developing some housing on the north end of town, but you can't get anywhere if you're not able to have a car or have a driver's license. So getting people some transportation from those outskirts into where the services are in this county would be very helpful. We need to focus on more mental health services. There's a huge population out there that really could benefit from that, including our first responders. We need to really reach out to them and deal with the issues that particularly affects them. And ultimately, public involvement.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hefflinger. And now I will yield to the Courier's Steve Dillon for the next two questions.
Actually, we'll try to squeeze in one more question before the closing. The city and county continue to operate separate dispatch centers, even though they are less than 100 yards apart. Great savings and better efficiency would seem to be possible with shared dispatch. Would you support a partnership of such if proposed? I believe we're to Mr. Schindeldecker?
Mr. Russell.
Mr. Russell.
Yes, I would support shared dispatch. Once again, the devil's in the details. I know that they've done shared dispatch like in the city of Columbus for a long while. As our systems are actually becoming integrated, we're going to be on the same, in essence, police systems police computer systems for lack of a better term. That would make a merging better, but the details would be very difficult to do. I've actually sat in dispatch on a Friday night. It's interesting to watch how these folks work. You describe it as being able to multitask through a fire hose, and they really have. They're juggling so many things at one time. So there'd be some staffing and some spacing issues, but and also some redundancy issues. Our fallback right now between each other is we fall back to the county, they fall back to us in case of problems. But the overall concept, I'd be in favor of studying it.
Thank you. Mr. Wobser?
I agree also that the overall concept makes sense, that we should be able to combine those functions. They're essentially doing the same thing. However, we've got to get buy-in from the sheriff, and we've got to get buy-in from our police chief and our administration to do that. I think our administration is open to that. I'm not so sure the sheriff is, but with the fact that we, council, invested in the new software and systems put into place that allows our recording of our data and all of the police runs to be made much more efficiently, that was a huge upgrade for us. And that will allow us to be able to merge those groups together if we needed to. So yes, we need to do it. We need to take a hard look at it. And for some reason financially it doesn't make sense, we shouldn't, but I'd kind of be shocked if that was the case.
Thank you. Ms. Heflinger?
Thank you. I think that merging the two has a lot of high points. It could streamline the system for victims. If you're needing to access the system, it would be much easier. You wouldn't have to call the one, and if it's the wrong, then you have to call the other entity. I think that implementation will be very difficult. And so this is not something that you can just willy-nilly, we're going to do this. The two systems do fundamentally work differently. Having worked with both police officers and sheriffs in, state, federal level law enforcement, they all operate differently. Their standards are different for the types of calls that they're even going to go on. So streamlining that down into one is going to be a very long-term project, but should probably be added to the strategic planning.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Schindeldecker.
The software that Mr. Wobser referred to is about $750,000 that the city invested in software that, once it's up and running, will do everything but burp the baby, and maybe do that too. It's probably going to take the better part of a year to input the data necessary to get that up and running, and I'm not sure exactly what stage we're at yet. We're not there. Once we are there, yes, at that point, I think it's vital and more efficient than everything else you can think of to merge the dispatch centers of both the city and Hancock County, and we might even consider, in one way or another, having the highway patrol involved as well. Yes, it's something that is coming. We are working on it. It's not here yet. It'll be a while.
Okay. Well, let's move on to the closing statements. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to make their closing, and we'll start in reverse order and work our way back. Ms. Heflinger, you're first.
Thank you. I first want to acknowledge the fact that I was even invited. Thank you. I really appreciate that. This is my first time running for office, if it's not clear by me being up here already. I love this community wholeheartedly, and realistically, this was not the best time for me to run for office. I'm getting married on Saturday, and but I love this community. I wanted to give back. My entire career has been public service, and I've been an advocate for folks that have been picked up in the legal system. I have been an advocate for victims. I have been an advocate for my family members, and I'd love to be an advocate for this community. I think that I have a lot of skill sets that would give me a decent chance at actually helping everybody around here. I have seen parts of this city that a lot of people, not due to any fault of their own, but they just don't see that exist. And we need to stop letting that hide in the shadows, bring it to light, have much more community involvement. People just want to be heard. They don't need to get their way all the time, believe it or not. They really mostly want to be heard. They'd love to get their way, but they don't need it. And if you're involving more ideas, you're bound to get a better outcome. And I firmly believe that, and that's why I'm running. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wobser?
Well, I can concur with Abby that sometimes life throws interesting things at you, and there's really never a good time to do things like this. It has been an interesting year for myself in this past year, but with that, I am very much looking forward to 2 more years to work with council. We have a lot of things that have gotten started that we need to see through to completion. The strategic planning is one of those, and that is the project that I want to continue to see. I had talked about in my opening statement about the financial aspects of our city government and our city budget that I want to take and make sure that we get our city shored up for the long term. Yes, we're in a great situation now, but it wouldn't take much for us, an economic downturn or an employer to leave town, for that to turn around and be much more difficult to work with. So we need to plan for those things. And having that experience over the last 4 years has helped me to be able to see path forward and know the people that we need to work with to get that done. The good news is that our council, the men that I'm sitting next to me, we work very well together, and I know that I can count on them to help do the right things when we look at our financial structure of the city. So with that, I simply ask for your vote. I look forward to serving the community again. It has been a pleasure in the past 4 years, and look forward to doing it again.
Thank you. Mr. Russell.
Thank you once again to WFIN, to the Courier and University of Findlay for hosting us tonight. Appreciate hearing the words of everyone on council, or everyone, excuse me, up here today. This is one of the best forums we've had. The questions have been great. It's been very interesting to hear how they've been responded to. The city has not achieved any of our success by accident. It's the result of hard work, cooperation, well laid out planning and execution of those plans. It's city departments working together. They're focused, laser focused on delivering value for all of our citizens. It's the city cooperating county-wide, statewide, with the county, with agricultural communities, with the business community on flood mitigation efforts. It's public and private cooperation. That results in our nationally recognized economic development. In all of this, there's no I. It's not about me. It's all us. It's everyone up here. It's the community. That's how we achieve our success. Working together, working hard, working together. And that hard work and that cooperation is really going to be the key to how we remain successful. And it's how we must approach all of our future challenges. My promise is to you, the citizens of Findlay, I'm going to continue to work hard. I'll work cooperatively with anyone who's focused on all the lives of improving all the lives of every citizen in Findlay. I'll continue to give you my best efforts, my time and my energy. I'll do my homework. And I'll continue to communicate with you, be it on a walk home from council, in line at Wilson's or Dietz Brothers, anywhere, email, Facebook, phone. You contact me, I will contact you back. You might not always like the answer, but I'll explain to you where I stand. My name's Grant Russell. I'm very proud to serve you on Findlay City Council, and I do ask you for your vote this coming election.
Thank you. Mr. Schindeldecker.
My mother's maiden name was Russell with 2 L's as opposed to 1. Obviously, one of the 2 of us came from the wrong side of the tracks. You can figure out which one. For those who don't know my past, and a lot of it I hope you don't know about, I spent 47 years as news director of WFIN and the Findlay Publishing radio stations, and I was at council meeting a lot. I figure I've gone to 12 to 1,300 council meetings, including the past 6 years. I thought I knew a little bit about how it operated. Yes, I do know the procedures and did know that, but 2 things I had to learn real quickly. One, there's a lot more things you can't do than what you can. And second, you have to be thinking 4 and 5 and 6 steps ahead all of the time. I think I have the ability to do that. I think I have the ability to gauge what the public is interested in and where their concerns are. I'm not afraid to go against the grain sometimes. I voted in favor of the Main Street project, for example. I'm not in favor of the Blanchard Street project. My wife and I have been very fortunate to be able to travel a number of places, other continents, practically every state in the Union. When we travel, particularly with some leisure time, you run into people who are councilmen or aldermen or whatever from other communities. They know about Findlay, Ohio. We are so fortunate in this community, financially and the way we grow and so forth. We need to continue to keep the ball rolling, and experience is part of that. I'm humbled to have been on council for the past 6 years, and I'd like to continue for another 2. There are a lot of things that have not been completed. We need to complete them, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, we come to the end of this candidate forum for the 3 at-large seats on Findlay City Council. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and thank you to all the candidates for their participation in tonight's forum. We'd also like to thank the Courier, UFTV for televising this forum, and WFIN at 1330 and 95.5 FM for the live radio coverage. Remember to join us a week from today. Next Wednesday, we'll have another candidate forum, the mayoral candidate forum For Findlay Mayor, of course, we'll have the Findlay Mayor, Christina Mern, and challenger Chad Benschotter in that one. That'll be next Wednesday at 5 o'clock. Remember to get out there and vote. Election Day is coming up Tuesday, November 5th, and before that, early voting begins already next Tuesday, October 8th. Early voting gets underway. So for Steve Dillon, I'm Matt Demchek. Good night from the University of Findlay.